Welcome back to Disc Golf Over 40. In my last video, I talked about how knowing your arm speed helps you understand about how far you should be able to throw a disc. I got a lot of great comments on that video, mainly talking about things like glide, nose angle, the launch angle or the height that you give that disc, and spin, how those make a pretty big difference on how far a given disc will fly. So today I wanted to test this a little bit more. I spent some time throwing 4 different drivers last week, and I was happy with the types of results I was getting. I threw on flat ground, and I was testing for distance versus glide. I took data from several throws. I looked at the average trends, and I'm going to share those with you along with some of my favorite best throws that came out of this. So let's get into it. Okay, so my last video helped nail down the right expectations for how far you should be able to throw, but it didn't really explain how to get farther in that envelope. So, okay, for me, like I said, the best way I could test all of this was using several discs that had different glide values. So if we call Fission Trail a 6 glide, then we could say we've got basically 4, 5, 6, and 7 glide in these discs that I tried out. So how did the results go? I'm going to share with you the plot here, as you can see, that shows the average distance thrown. And I do have a target listed in these plots, but the truth is I was mostly trying to get past that target, in line with it, beyond it. So for the Orc, let's look at that first. 4 glide disc. On average, I threw this one about 290 feet. There was a good bit of spread on some of these purple data points for the Orc throws. The gray data points indicate all throws from all the discs that I tested, just so you know. So the farthest I threw the Orc was 329 feet, and I'm sharing that throw footage here with you. A very nice hyzer flip throw that relatively low launch angle, but just glided out there quite well. Landed behind the grass on the pavement back there. Yeah, the pavement probably didn't hurt me, allowing for some skips with these throws. But 329 feet, awesome throw for me. I haven't been throwing that far lately. Okay, let's look next at the Neutron Trail, the tried and true. This disc, as you can see, average of about 304 feet, so a little farther on average by about 10 feet than our, or we'll say 15 feet than our Orc. And my longest throw with the Neutron Trail that day, or that week, was 343 feet, which I'm sharing here as well. Similar thing, I also threw this on kind of a low angle and was very happy with how it just carried out there. I think, you know, lower launch angle, optimal nose angle, not nose up, that thing really went far. 343 feet, not bad for me at all. Okay, next we'll look at the Saint. We're looking at these in order of distance. So the Saint with 7 glide, on average 286 feet. So that one, yeah, it was almost 20 feet on average shorter than the Neutron Trail. And it was a little bit shorter than the Orc on average for me over these throws. And it was 14 throws per disc each, right? Another thing I noticed with the Saint was, if you look at this plot, there's like 2 groups of, of throws here. Some are all to the left, and some are all to the right of the target, with one sailing out there 352 feet. I was very surprised by that one. I'm showing the footage of that throw here, and it was also similar, a nice flat, not too high shot that just glided and glided and ended up way out there. I would say those throws I've shared so far were all pretty comparable as far as they were all pretty low, nice and straight, nice and flat. 352 feet, really awesome. I have at least captured on camera throwing some of my farther throws finally, because all my longest flat ground throws have never been on camera. Okay, next, let's look at the Fission trail. So this one, average distance 297 feet. So overall, the best average was the Neutron trail, but these throws, as you can see, all kind of grouped in nicely around where I was aiming. I had a few that went quite far, over 330, and my farthest throw 362, which I think is 1 foot shorter than my best ever throw with the Neutron trail. So I nearly hit my max ever with the Fission trail, and that was really exciting. Showing the footage here, that one I actually put the disc up a bit higher, and I think there was a very slight headwind. It ended up following a bit of an unstable path nearly toward this van that I was worried about hitting, and then came out of it and skipped on the pavement, and that was an awesome throw for me. So yeah, distance-wise, if we're talking about just strictly distance, these discs all went. We could say that these first three lined up in order of glide number, while the Fission trail, I think I optimized that height such that we can't really attribute anything just to glide, because more than one thing changed in that throw. But that shows you, if you get that full flight path, and if it maintains that longer S-curve, it's more likely to go farther. So in summary, let's look at this plot that shares exactly what everything did. And what I've done here is I've got the different data points are colored differently per disc, and I've got boxes around them, and we're counting how many throws ended up above, or well, greater than or equal to 300 feet versus less than 300 feet for each disc. So if we look at the Neutron trail with the 5 glide, I ended up with 9 above 300 and 5 below. If we look at the Fission trail, 7 and 7, equal numbers beyond and below, however, a bigger spread in those, right? Less consistency. If we look at the Saint, we ended up with only 3 beyond 100 or 300 and 11 below. So that one actually did the worst as far as the number that got over 300 feet. And then for the Orc, we ended up with 6 above 300 and 8 below. So kind of interesting breakdown here with how these worked out. I don't know that we can, excuse me, completely attribute anything to glide. I would say that for me, I'm, as usual, most consistent with the Neutron trail, but there is potential to throw farther with a disc that'll do more of an S-curve for me, that being the Fission trail. And honestly, still shocked about this Saint, because it didn't really do a major S-curve, but it sure glided long. I mean, all things being equal, you know, these two, I think the Saint's going to go farther if you throw it exactly the same way, and you don't have too much wind. It's going to probably go farther because of that glide compared to the Neutron trail. But I think I would have done a little better possibly to have a lighter weight Saint than I got. This one was a little too overstable to be that comparable. And that's why I think most of the shots, the throws with it, were shorter distances. All right, so because I'm not able to consistently throw to actually test, you know, what the difference is between nose angle, launch angle, spin, glide, I went ahead and simulated all those variables in the TechDisc simulator online and looked at the distances that the disc flew in the simulator given changing those parameters. I assumed my own measured arm speed of 158 miles per hour, and I also assumed a consistent hyzer angle on the throw, and left most things constant other than adjusting launch angle, adjusting nose angle, and adjusting glide and spin. So here's the plot that we ended up with. The color represents distance. So you can see across the grid of plots, the distance ranges from around 140 to beyond 360 feet. Within each of these plots is showing you the results in distance for a given glide and a given spin. Okay. On the y-axis, we show launch angle, and on the x-axis, we show nose angle. Let's focus on the center row, first of all, just looking at the overall types of results we got here. As we move from left to right, we see that the red color increases or gets darker, meaning longer distance. What that means is, as we go up in glide, because each of those columns of plots is taken from a different glide, we end up with a longer distance. So for the center left plot, we end up with 335 feet. It's the max, 358 in the middle, and 372 at the end. That gives you an idea that there's probably somewhere around 10 to 20 feet possible to gain by throwing cleanly and just changing the glide on the disc. Okay. Nose angle and launch angle matter a lot too. The best results on these plots come when your nose angle is about -1 and your launch angle is about 5. That gives you the max distance, but you still get a very far distance throw even if your launch angle is low, say 1, and your nose angle is 2. So you're giving the disc some height either in launch or in nose, and as long as it's got that appropriate amount of height and angle to that flight path, not being too nose up, it's more likely to go quite far. I did put on the center row there about where my Orc, Neutron Trail, and Saint throws matched up with this plot based on the type of throw that I did from analyzing my footage and assuming nose angles and launch angles. It does look like they fall within the decent throw distances possible for those glides, and they follow approximately with the trend expected for glide. So 329 actual distance versus simulated 323 for the Orc. For the Neutron Trail, 343 versus simulated 344. And for the Saint, we got 352 real distance versus 346 simulated. And those, again, are ballpark as far as which simulation box there matches properly with my throw. But I feel like those are pretty representative. So this was very interesting. I think I really liked seeing this result because even if you don't perfectly get, this negative nose angle and high launch angle, you do have possibility to get a long distance by just throwing a clean, minimal nose angle, flat, straight throw, which is very similar to what I did with most of these discs on my favorite longest throws. That was actually really cool to see how the simulation matched reality with that. So, does glide matter most? I'd say glide does absolutely make a difference. But it's not easy to tell what that difference is without a consistent throw. And I do feel like I was able to demonstrate some consistency in my throw. My form is not perfect, but I got some decent distance for me during these tests. So I think in the end, what matters most with everything I've looked at is you want to find that disc that is going to offer well, I think there's two ways to go about it. I mean, we can compare these two. These two are the example for me because this one got my max distance similar to what I've rarely gotten with this. And this one got the most consistency in distance, right? So I actually was a lot more inconsistent with the Fission trail than I was with the Neutron trail, even though I happened to max out my distance with this. I feel like the reason for that is this is just a more forgiving disc for my throw imperfections. It's more likely to fly well for me. It's going to do well into the wind if there's a little bit of wind or if there's not. The Fission trail was more inconsistent because it was more likely to flip over a little bit if there was a little bit of wind and it was just going to fly off course. And it just was a little more touchy, I guess, for me, though very capable. So I'm still looking for a disc that I can trust will go a farther distance than the Neutron trail consistently. But yeah, in this testing, both of these discs went farther. You know, it's not definitive. Those were like the outlier data points basically in my box plots that I showed, the summary plots at the end. But I feel like if you can get a disc that'll follow that full flight path consistently for you and not be too touchy at the same time, you're going to be the best. All right, so just wanted to finish up and share this information with you to round out that story about how to go about getting max distance with by knowing how far you can throw and what speed disc makes sense, by also knowing your arm speed and what range of possibilities exist, and that it is possible to be off that chart that I've shared for distance just by optimizing the disc selection and finding that disc that's more forgiving. I ended up getting several disc recommendations from my last video, and I will continue in the search to test these. But anything you guys can share about how glide, nose angle, launch angle, spin, impact throws for you, please share with me. I'd like to hear anything you have to say, or if you have an outlier the other way. If, say, you have a lower glide disc or a lower speed disc or whatever that actually is farthest flying for you, share what it is. Share if you know your arm speed. Let's try to bound this problem a little bit more and understand it even better. But thanks so much for everyone that contributed to the last one, and thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.